The time by Carrie Chris is 6 p.m. Time for CBX Business News. The business news headlines is brought to you by CBX Wealth Management, making more possible.
Tariff tensions, Bahamas deficit slash, and oil prices bounce back. Good evening and welcome to CBX Business News for Monday, October 13, 2025. I'm Rochelle Moncrief. Thanks for joining us. Coming up in the newscast, locally, global trade fragmenting as the U.S. leads a tariff offensive. Jamaica faces high-stakes economic shift. On the regional front, the Bahamas slashes its fiscal deficit to 0.5%, citing debt discipline and economic gains. And over on the global stage, crude oil prices rebound as the Trump-Jinping summit is put back on track. Stay tuned as we unpack these stories and more right after the break.
Wealth is not simply counted in dollars or cents, but in the time we spend with love, in love, giving love. Wealth is not simply a means to an end. It is the means to live out loud. Wealth is more than money. It's about family, the memories you create, the legacy you leave behind, and your ability to enjoy life in the moment. It's also about seeing the CBX possibilities and seizing investment opportunities to achieve the future you want and deserve. Which is why CBX Wealth will focus on your investments so you can experience more. Because true wealth is truly more. To start investing today, call 876-926-7767.
The local news is brought to you by Derriman Trading, better from the start. Development Bank of Jamaica, facilitating economic growth and development. Caribbean flavors and fragrances, tease the senses, and Pulse Investments.
Back to CBX Business News. We begin with a powerful shift shaking the global economy. Global trade is being weaponized. That's according to Chairman of the Port Authority of Jamaica, Alok Jain, who warns that a new global power contest is reshaping the trading system. What began as tariff disputes has now evolved into a full-blown economic showdown, and Jamaica, like many small open economies, is squarely in its path. For nearly 80 years, the global economy ran on a single rulebook: open markets, low tariffs, and free-flowing supply chains. But that chapter is closing fast. Speaking under the theme Tariffs and the Impact on Global Trade at the recently staged ICAJ 2025 Business Conference in Kingston, Jain says trade is no longer just business. It's become a weapon of power.
The response from the U.S. has been to enact a series of landmark laws, the CHIPS Act, Inflation Reduction Act, Strategic Competition Act, and in an attempt to rebuild their own manufacturing base, protect critical industries, and secure technological leadership. So the global trading system today is not just about commerce. It is today weaponized. You use the trading system with tariffs, export controls, subsidies as tools of strategic power. in the contest for global influence. So it's not just about economics anymore.
He says the United States, which once built the global liberal order, now stands at the center of its unraveling.
The United States, which was the architect of the post-war economic order, now stands at the center of its unraveling. Right? Washington, which was once the champion of globalization and open markets, has now become the chief disruptor. What has caused this change of heart? There are a number of reasons, but I think the key catalyst has been the rise of China and the fear that Beijing could soon overtake the US as the world's leading superpower and rule maker.
That was chairman of the Port Authority of Jamaica, Alok Jean. JMMB Group's core engine is back in gear, delivering Jamaican $3.7 billion in net profit for the financial year ended March 31, 2025. At Friday's annual general meeting, Group CFO Patrick Ellis reported that operating revenue rose 6% to just over 25 billion Jamaican dollars, outpacing a 4% rise in costs.
We made net earnings of 3.7 billion, but I want to set that context in terms of our numbers. What we're happy about is the substance of those numbers in terms of it's driven by our core operations. So we are driving our earnings from where we want to get it, which is our net interest income. You would have seen that operating revenues was 25.2 billion, up 6%. And our expenses was up as well at 4%. So we are growing our revenues faster than our expenses.
Ellis added that JMMB held margins in a still elevated rate environment and booked almost 6 billion Jamaican dollars in securities trading gain.
And our gains on securities trading, which also forms a significant part of our revenue, we're able to garner 5.8 billion. And I think that's really a creditable performance.
That was JMMB's Group Chief Financial Officer, Patrick Ellis. A new 1.5 billion Jamaican dollar commercial hub is rising on the country's north coast, with Booth, Jamaica, breaking ground on its second major development in Drax Hall, St. Anne. Speaking at the groundbreaking ceremony last Friday, Booth's Chief Executive Officer, Alexia Booth, says the three-story development will feature several shops, dining establishments, cinemas, a Wendy's, and sufficient parking, thus creating a premier service hub.
Boot 2 will feature a Wendy's franchise, a full service to a market with expanded offerings, entertainment facilities, flexible commercial spaces ranging from 700 to 15,000 square foot, and underground parking. Our development aligns seamlessly with the Government of Jamaica's road expansion plans for St. Anne. We will be responsible for beautifying and maintaining 0.8 kilometers of the four-way High Lane in accordance with the protocols of the National Works Agency and the local parish council. This section will feature modern, illuminated bus stops equipped with Wi-Fi connectivity, ensuring that even our public infrastructure serves the community's evolving needs.
That was Booth's Chief Executive Officer, Alexia Booth. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Andrew Holness, who delivered the keynote address, framed the investment as part of a new wave of Jamaican entrepreneurship that's reshaping the country's growth map.
There are many, I would like to term them, new investors emerging, a new class of entrepreneurs emerging in the country who are driving the growth of the country, who see themselves as part of the vanguard of development.
That was Prime Minister of Jamaica, Dr. Andrew Holness. In other news, one of Jamaica's largest medical and consumer goods distributors, Medical Disposables and Supplies Limited, is reporting a $34.9 million reduction in net losses and stronger margins, marking what executives describe as the company's journey back to black. For the financial year ended March 31, 2025, revenue grew to $3.88 billion, up 4.7% from the prior year, while gross profit surged by 23% to $876.4 million. The company's net loss improved to $281.06 million, down from $315.96 million a year earlier, reflecting tighter cost control, sharper operational focus, and targeted expansion in the consumer division. Chief Executive Officer Kurt Booth described the year as a turning point, crediting deliberate strategy, disciplined execution, and a renewed sense of purpose for the results. However, despite the stronger performance, MDS remains under pressure to restore full profitability. Total assets declined to $2.54 billion, and shareholders' equity fell to $603 million, while the debt-to-equity ratio climbed to 320%. We go now to updates from the Bank of Jamaica on how the currency markets traded today. In Monday's trading session, the US dollar is selling for $161.85, the Canadian for $116.33, the pound sterling for $215.18, and the going rate for the euro is $190.34. We move to the latest updates from the JSE equities. In Monday's trading session, the JSE market activity resulted in the trading of 111 stocks, of which 42 advanced, 49 declined, and 20 traded firm. The winners today include Key Insurance Company, ISP Finance Services, 138 Student Living Jamaica Variable Preference, and the Limnas and Bards. While leading the losers are VM Investments, Consolidated Bakeries Jamaica, Epley Caribbean Property Fund SCC, and Cargo Handlers. The main index declined by 411.21 points or 0.13% to close at 321,874.91 points. The junior market index declined by 21.11 points or 0.63% to close at 3,333.90 points.
And it's time for Market Education Feature, brought to you by CariCris, Regional Ratings, Global Standard.
In today's Market Education Feature, we're exploring the term contribution margin. The contribution margin shows how much money a company earns from each product or unit sold after subtracting its variable costs. It can be expressed as a total amount or on a per unit basis. The calculation is simple. Selling price per unit minus variable cost per unit. The result, often called the dollar contribution per unit, reveals how much each product contributes to covering fixed cost and generating profit. Once fixed costs are fully covered, any additional contribution margin becomes a profit for the company, making this metric a key tool for pricing and profitability decisions.
The Market Education Feature was brought to you by CariCris, Regional Ratings, Global Standards.
And that's it for the local news segment. Please stay with us. The regional news is up next.
The local news is brought to you by Darriman Trading, better from the start. Development Bank of Jamaica, facilitating economic growth and development. Caribbean flavors and fragrances, tease the senses. and Pulse Investments.
We're here to open a savings account for my son John. I really want him to start saving and managing his own money.
And I need for Save to visit my father in New York.
Okay, based on what you said and our risk assessment, he will qualify for simplified customer due diligence requirements. I'll need your ID, proof of income, TRN, and John's ID as well.
Okay, here you go.
Opening an account is easier than you think using simplified customer due diligence requirements, also called CDD.
Welcome back. And now for the regional business news. Prime Minister Philip Davis is declaring fiscal victory, announcing that the Bahamas has closed the 2024-25 budget year with a 0.5% fiscal deficit, solidly within its target range of 0.3 to 0.7% and far removed from the 13.7% shortfall recorded in 2021. Speaking in the House of Assembly during the debate on the Bahamas Protected Area Fund Amendment Bill 2025 recently, Davis says the figure represents more than just balancing the books. It reflects economic discipline, debt strategy, and a shared national progress.
The Ministry of Finance has confirmed that we have achieved a 0.5% deficit for the budget period ending June 30th, 2025. Just want to remind all that this achievement is in the mid-range of our original target. We targeted to have a deficit of the budget of 0.3% or between 0.3% to 0.7%. We came in the middle, 0.5%.
That was Prime Minister of the Bahamas, Philip Davis. In a bold bid to turbocharge trade and ease the cost of living squeeze, the government of Antigua and Barbuda is moving swiftly to recast the island as a regional logistics powerhouse. The strategic pivot was unveiled by Director General of Communications in the Prime Minister's office, Maurice Merchant, during last week's post-cabinet briefing. He says this push places logistics and trade facilitation at the center of Antigua's growth agenda, positioning the country as a major air and maritime transshipment hub serving the Eastern Caribbean.
They approved a proposal to deepen collaboration with an international logistics conglomerate or grouping comprising Southern Air and Seven Air out of Miami as part of a strategic plan to position Antigua as a central air and maritime logistics hub for the Eastern Caribbean and beyond. They are also exploring logistics links between Antigua, the OECS, the Dominican Republic, Panama, Colombia, and parts of South America.
That was Antigua's Director General of Communications in the Prime Minister's office, Maurice Merchant. We now turn to a decisive step to protect healthcare workers' earnings and strengthen critical health services in Grenada. Health Minister Philip Telesford has confirmed that an agreement has been reached ensuring the full salaries of Cuban medical personnel assigned to Grenada will be paid directly to them following high-level talks with Cuban officials in Havana. The issue surfaced after reports that a portion of their earnings was being withheld by Cuban authorities. Speaking at a recent town hall meeting, Minister Telesford emphasized that those concerns have been fully resolved, securing full payment for the brigade and bringing the matter to a close.
We recognize that the workers were made to pay over a certain portion of the salary to the Cuban authorities. That's what we are told. We are able to treat with that, and as we speak, we have been able to reach agreement with the Cuban authorities that no amounts of the people's salaries to be deducted in that way.
That was Grenada's Health Minister, Philip Telesford. And in a move to safeguard its agricultural sector, Belize Agricultural Health Authority, BAHA, has issued a firm warning against the illegal importation and sale of unregistered and expired veterinary products. The agency says it has become aware of individuals soliciting donations of expired veterinary medications from overseas donors, as well as unregistered online businesses selling unpermitted veterinary drugs and animal feed in Belize. Baha stressed that all veterinary drugs, pesticides, vaccines, hygiene and care products, and animal feed must be registered with the Veterinary Drugs Control Unit and supported by valid import permits. It's now time for news from the Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange. Overall market activity resulted from trading in 22 securities, of which 7 advanced, 3 declined, and 12 traded firm. Today's winners are First Citizens Group Financial Holdings, CIBC Caribbean Bank, Ansa McCall, and Massey Holdings, while leading the losers are Calypso Macro Index Fund, JMMB Group, and AS Bryden and Sons Holdings. Trading activity resulted in the following movements. The All-TNT Index advanced by 13.07 points to close at 1,452.48. The Composite Index advanced by 10.01 points to close at 997.56. The Cross-Listed Index advanced by 0.95 points to close at 71.45. The SME Index remained at 99.17. And we take a short break, but please do stay with us. The international news segment is up next.
If it were not for the Jamaica Stock Exchange listing, Phosphate Company Limited would not be where it's at today. I called them, they listened to my concerns and my fears, and they gave me the answers. All the fears I had about banks, about losing control, you are having them. And I tell you, they were dissipated when I spoke to the Jamaica Stock Exchange. This is one of the best decisions I have ever made in business. If you want to change the trajectory of your business and to grow, make that call today to the Jamaica Stock Exchange. You will be glad you did.
Back. In international news, oil prices climbed after fresh assurances that U.S. President Donald Trump will meet Chinese President Xi Jinping later this month, easing fears of a trade flare-up that rattled markets last week. Brent crude rose to $63.32 a barrel, while U.S. West Texas Intermediate climbed to $59.49, both up nearly 1%. The gains follow last Friday's steep drop when Trump threatened new tariffs on China and hinted the summit could be called off. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent confirmed the talks are still set for late October in South Korea, saying the two sides have been in substantial communication. Meanwhile, China's crude imports are rising, and the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries has kept its oil demand outlook steady. Peace signals in the Middle East are also calming the market, but traders want proof the ceasefire will hold. And while the energy market is steadying on trade optimism, another major company is feeling the heat, this time from an activist investor. Hedge fund Starboard Value has built a stake in Keurig Dr. Pepper, and it's already turning up the pressure. The move comes after Keurig announced an $18 billion deal to acquire JDE Peet's, a strategy that sent the company's stock tumbling almost 24%. On Monday, shares bounced back about 3% on news of Starboard's involvement. The deal would split Keurig's coffee and beverage units into two separate U.S.-listed companies, aiming to unlock $400 million in annual cost savings and boost competitiveness. But Starboard's engagement signals investors want more and faster. Meanwhile, in Brussels, European lawmakers have pulled back on some of their most ambitious sustainability goals. The European Parliament's Legal Affairs Committee has voted to sharply scale back the reach of the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive and Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive. The threshold for companies has been raised from 250 to 1,000 employees for CSRD and 5,000 for CSDDD, after months of lobbying from major business groups in Germany and France. Washington has also weighed in, with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce calling the directives unprecedented regulatory overreach. The rollback signals a softer line from Brussels and a victory for corporate Europe. And finally this evening, a diplomatic trade dance playing out in Asia, with one of South Korea's largest automakers at the center. The South Korean government is taking aim at Hyundai Motor Company over the timing of a massive U.S. investment announcement. Industry Minister Kim Jong-kwam says Seoul expressed deep regret after Hyundai unveiled plans to boost its U.S. investment to $26 billion, right in the middle of sensitive trade negotiations with Washington. The backlash comes just weeks after a raid on Hyundai's Georgia plant and underscores how trade policy, politics, and corporate strategy are colliding at a critical moment for South Korea's export sector. And that's it for the international segment of the newscast. The news recap is coming up on the other side of
So much book you need for high school?
I'll show you how to make sure you have all the money for my books and even some extra. It's called budgeting, Dad. Making a budget is the most important thing you can do to track your money. It keeps a record of how much you make, how much you spend, where you spend it, and most importantly, how much you can save. Write down all your income, write down all your expenses, see where you can cut down and allot more money to more important things, like saving.
And now to recap our top stories. In the local news, global trade fragmenting as U.S. leads tariff offensive. Jamaica faces high-stakes economic shift. Regionally, Bahamas slashes fiscal deficit to 0.5%, citing debt discipline and economic gains. And internationally, crude oil prices rebound as Trump-Jinping summit back on track. Those were the stories making today's CBX Evening News. On behalf of the entire production team, I'm Rochelle Moncrief. Thanks for watching CBX, your region, your business, your source.